Hello, everybody.
Hello, Ken.
Welcome. How you doing? Welcome to episode 169 of Line Upon Line. We're happy to see our viewers are popping in there. I'm seeing the numbers go up. That always is a good thing. Tonight we're going to talk about Halloween and why not have a safe Halloween or fall festival? What's wrong with that? And we're all back fresh from the feast, feeling good about things. I only had to work 2 days in the last 2 weeks, so life is good. So, Dr. Ricks, if you'd like to start us out, we're ready to go.
It was nice to get back to the feast and have a little time to regroup. These are Halloween puns. As a pun, think of the word. What did the Papa Ghost say to the baby ghost when they got in their car? Fasten your sheet belt.
Nice.
Oh.
Okay, the next pun. What do you say when you meet a three-headed monster? Hello, hello, hello. Okay, another Halloween pun. Why did the spider buy a car? Because he wanted to take it out for a spin. Now, this one requires careful thought. What's frightening and stuck on the end of your arm? A terrorist.
Yeah.
Now, here are a few more short sayings. Laughter is the best medicine in certain situations, but there are some situations when the Heimlich maneuver may be much more appropriate. And another one, you must learn to crawl before you can grovel. Okay. If you keep your head when all about you are losing theirs, you're probably the executioner.
That was good. That's terrible. I like that.
Yes, that would fit Halloween very well. You've got to kiss a lot of frogs before you find the prince, but he's probably isn't going to be interested in some frog kisser.
That's a point.
Well, that's sort of Halloween jokes. Okay, Magic Prince and the Frog. So we're going to look, as Ken said, can we have an uplifting, safe Christian Halloween? While I was kind of trying to view this topic from another angle, and I was reading what many other churches and pastors were saying about Halloween, I found a fair number of them that said something like this. We know Halloween is dangerous for children, especially in the rural, big cities, all kinds of things, and pedophiles and poison candy. You've heard the whole routine. We're going to have a safe, wholesome Halloween in the basement of the church. Then some of them go one step further. They said, well, to make it even more wholesome, we won't have the real ghoulish costume. We'll encourage them to wear things like cowboys and Indians, Star Wars figures, Darth Vader mask, and some of the masks that you would say weren't so. Now, doesn't that sound like a safe celebration?
No. It's not spiritually safe.
No, not at all. Not at all.
And then one or two of them added in, we'll turn it into a Christian celebration because the kids and the parents, we all need a fall celebration. And you know what I thought when I heard that, don't you?
Yeah, we already got one. It's called the Feast of Tabernacle.
We came back from it a few days, well, a week or so before Halloween. That's exactly what I thought. Then I thought, the best way to answer that question, can you have a safe Christian I want to emphasize the word Christian, uplifting Halloween, is let's look at the background of Halloween. What are the real roots of Halloween? By the way, anybody want to add anything before I get into some of the script we have written out about the real roots of Halloween?
Well, I mean, if you look up Samhain and All Saints Day, you can go through Wikipedia and go through that. And like we were talking before the program, I tried to dig back to as far as I could go, and it gets into the Celts and the Druids in the Celtic world, and all the different pagan rituals they went through. And I don't know. You could tie this clear back to, I think, and we discussed it. Maybe Dan, you can tie it clear back to them, and maybe that's how some of this got started because they brought forth a lot of paganism through the tribe of Dan. So maybe that's where because it is where they ended up over in Ireland or parts of England and Scotland. So that could be where this stems from. Could be also why there's so much paganism, that if that's true, why they're not included in 144,000, because they brought paganism to the masses.
Yeah, it's possible. And a lot of it's from Central Europe, and maybe some even comes from the Middle East, from other pagan cultures, and kind of our world, Western world, being more focused on what came out of Europe. But what came out of Europe, of course, as we know, is they worship the god of the dead. It looks like Samhain, but I was told it's pronounced Samhain in the original language. But he was the god of the dead.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I think last time I looked this stuff up, I think I did use the little pronunciation. You can click on a little speaker sometimes, depending on the site, and it's Sowain or Sohain or something like that. It's strange. It's not like how it's spelled.
Yeah, and this Sowain or Samhain was the god of the dead. And the pagans had all kinds of gods. I don't know if you remember this, but those who saw the original 10 Commandments, when the Pharaoh's son died, he went to this god who was like black marble, a peak kind of odd shaped face, or he was the god of the dead. He carried people back and forth from the living to the dead. And he wanted that God to prove he was better, stronger than Moses' God by bringing his son back across from the dead. But pagans have had gods like that. Well, in Central Europe and England and Scotland and Ireland and a few other places, the day of October 31st was the day to work. They had animal sacrifices, human sacrifices, and occasionally even some cannibalism. Scary stuff. And the term bonfire was from the words bones on fire, because they had a big bonfire was part of a celebration. And that's where the term bonfire came from. Bones on fire. There's a shocker there. And it's the high day, or the greatest day, for Wicca, witchcraft, and many of the occult. It's like whatever you think of the biggest holy high day, it's their number one holy high day. Give that some thought when you think we want to have our children's party on that day.
Right.
It's the pagans' day, and they believed October 31st, the barrier between the living world and the dead world was dissolved on that night, so the evil spirits and the spirits of the dead could cross over into the land of the living. And I believe they really believed it. When the Roman Empire kind of took over parts of Europe, they had some similar pagan traditions, Feralia, and they kind of tried to combine the two. But from my reading, even the Roman Catholic Church tried to kind of tamp it down and civilize it and change the date. They weren't able to do it. Even when the Roman Empire and the Roman Catholic Church ruled over much of Europe, the people still kept doing their pagan thing on October 31st. Pope Boniface changed things somewhat. He said Feralia was to be a Christian holiday, and instead of honoring the dead and dead spirits and scary spirits, we'll honor all the heroic dead saints. So it sounds real Christian. But they still kept doing it the old pagan way on the wrong date. So Pope Gregory III just fixed the Roman date to coincide with the pagan date, so they and the pagans could be doing the same thing. And so October 31st became All Hallows Eve, or we shorten that to Halloween. That's the history of it.
Yep. I read that originally All Saints Day was in May, I think, 1st of May or March. Mm-hmm. They swapped it out to, like you said, November 1st. And it's funny how they keep changing things to coalesce with what the pagans do and, you know, to kind of bring things in. But I read some other church websites, and, you know, I typed in, is it okay to celebrate Halloween? And I put in a few other search terms, and I got a lot of church pages, and they all were trying to justify it. None of them could point to any biblical reference that it's okay to do this. And the only one I could come up with vague reference to like Romans 14, or I think something like don't judge a man by his food or his drink or some sort of thing. That's what their best shot was, is trying to explain it away. But none of them had an explanation how you could biblically justify celebrating it. They're just like, it's not so bad.
Oh, I can see how they could do that. Don't judge him on all the booze he drinks on Halloween, and don't judge him on the candy he eats.
Or the Snickers bars, or
you're judging him on the candy he eats. Well, it's kind of funny in a way. And one more thing on the history. The Puritans who settled America, and the other settlers more or less went along with it, they outlawed Halloween. You know, the 1650s, 1750s, 1850s, all those 200 years, Halloween was outlawed. But by 1900, Halloween picked up momentum as a children's thing. I know now it's an adult thing now, but back then it was just a children's thing. We think it got momentum because the merchants saw the value in the candy sales and the mask. And America, after that period, because of the potato famine in Ireland and other reasons, got more and more Catholic immigrants, and they're used to Halloween. So it made,
what amazes me is several things. One is that there's some kind of custom all over the place that's very similar on the same time. Haiti, they have the Baron Samedi, which Samedi means Saturday. So Saturday is the day of, insinuating Saturday, the Sabbath, is the day of dead people or something. It's very demonic. And dealing with the public, I have people that know me relatively well, and they know I don't keep Christmas and Easter, and that we keep the Hebrew holy days and those things. Sent me multiple messages inviting me to his Halloween party tomorrow night. And finally I told him, I'm certainly not doing Halloween. And he explained that he had a lot of booze and it was all free and a lot of people and a lot of food. And I said, how can you think I won't do even a traditional kind of American Christmas, yet I'll do that?
But free booze.
I don't know. I guess. Be a good guy. He just can't get it.
And by the way, I'm not saying the pastors who want a Christian Halloween mean their motives are bad. I think they want to do the right thing. They just don't understand God in the way that they should. They don't know that, of course. If you tell them that, they probably laugh at you, but I really don't think they do in the way they should. One more thing go ahead, Dave.
Anton LaVey was the leader of the Church of Satan, and he was quoted as saying, even Christians will allow their children to worship Satan one day a year, when asked about Halloween. Broken clock, right? My question too for people is, does Halloween, how does it bring out any honor to God? How are you honoring God by doing this? What is the message you're sending to your children?
Zero.
God is the God of life. We worship light, not dark. everything. One of the first lessons in the Bible is the world had become void and darkness was upon the face of the earth. And the first thing God did was clean it up. He said, hey, let there be light. We got to get rid of the darkness. You know, and this is a time that they don't do it during the day. They do it at night. You know, I mean, it just on the, you got to be able to just look at the surface of it. It's pretty simple.
And, you know, as I think about it as a kid doing Halloween, at night, you feel freer to damage people's property. Not that I was all that bad. But really, you know, there's a certain mischief that goes with the night.
We were having that one time when I was a kid, and I had a couple vicious dogs. And I had no problem chaining them in front of the front door. So, at my car, my dog might eat you. You know, hey, let's face it, it's all in fun, right?
And by the commercial thing shouldn't be laughed at. Halloween is now the second largest merchant event in America. And it always surprises you when you think about it. You would think, well, what about Thanksgiving and 4th of July and Christmas and Valentine's Day? But no, it's not just for children, and it's big, money-wise.
Genesis 3:1, Satan is the most subtle of all the beasts. It started off with children doing these things. Now the children are grown up, playing children's games, to now getting everybody they know together, getting drunk and playing grown-up games. And it's subtle. You know, when I was a kid, there were some people that didn't do it. I think when my parents were kids, nobody did it, or very few people. But little by little, it grew up. And now those people are adults, or in my case, grandparents. And it just continues to grow. You know, one bad apple, or whatever you want to say it, a fungus continues to grow. It's got to be wiped out.
You know, one of the things I looked at the history that shocked me was the Catholic Church, I think, realized early on that this raw paganism in Europe was over the top. But even they could not dissuade the people from doing it. They had to, in my opinion, capitulate and move the day from the spring to October 31st. Now, then maybe they Christianized it by the meaning, but the people still do pretty much the same thing, except obviously we don't have human sacrifices. Although I've heard rumors that some of these witch covens out in the middle of the woods, nobody's watching, are sacrificing animals. And I've even heard of even worse rumors, but I guess I couldn't prove any of these rumors. But you've heard some of that, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. And I think they've had, there's been cases on TV or on the news where they've admitted that they've done certain things. Just so they could have those sacrifices. I mean, women have gotten pregnant just so they could have those sacrifices. I've heard it. It's sick, but I've heard it over the past few years, and it's interesting how this all evolved from, like, you will start when I was a kid. It was all kids and no adults would have anything to do with it. You know, they wouldn't go out and, I mean, as far as I know, my parents never did cared anything about it. But now it's all the adults are out there doing it, and it's one of those days that has evolved since in my lifetime to something different than what it started out.
It's like there's an evil spiritual force behind it that it's hard to suppress it.
Yeah, and the more evil, the more disgusting, and the more sick you can do it, the better it is for them. Because I've also see lots of reports where people have got these displays in their yard that are just so sick and disgusting. People around them, you know, try to get it taken down. I mean, it's amazing how the worse it gets, the more realistic and disgusting it is, the happier they are.
Yeah, we had one years ago. I think it was someone either in Ohio or Michigan had something that looked like real dead heads. Maybe I'm mistaken. Something like that in his front yard, and it scared the neighbors. Do you remember that? Like it was a
I do. It was. I think it was Ohio.
Dead body or something.
You're right.
Well, let's look at our first scripture, which is I think it's Deuteronomy.
Yep, Deuteronomy 12:30. Take heed to yourself that you are not ensnared to follow them after they are destroyed from before you, and that you do not inquire after their gods, saying, how did these nations serve their gods? I also will do likewise. You shall not worship the Lord your God in that way, for every abomination to the Lord which he hates, they have done to their gods, for they burn even their sons and daughters in the fire to their gods.
You know, a bonfire. You know, the thing that's most interesting is the modern mainstream Christian world was just drawn to or forced into Halloween. Like, well, they want it, we got to give it to them. Instead of, you know, bringing the pagans into more godly behaviors, like the pagans have sucked the churches, you know, into compromising with them.
Yep, they have. And if you tried to stop it, you could get everybody mad at you. I mean, they would have none of that. You know, we're gonna have our rituals, and you know, you're out of luck.
And as we said, in some countries, it's even worse than it is in America, from what I understand. Let's go to go ahead, Ken.
No, I was gonna say now, and then you can see why the Catholics caved and gave into it rather than stand up for God and stand against them. They just caved instead of doing the right thing. All right.
The next slide, please.
All right. Exodus 22:18. You shall not permit a sorceress to live.
Some translations say a witch, but it doesn't really matter. That shows you how strongly God feels about it. Now, I realize that was a theocracy led by Jehovah God, and they didn't have to do that very often. People quickly got away from witchcraft when that was done, but we can't do that in today's world because we don't have that kind of wisdom. This is not a theocracy, but it shows you what God thinks of witchcraft and sorcery.
Yeah, he didn't have much use for it.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't play around with it. And then let's go to 2 Timothy. I think that's the third one.
2 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of sound mind.
Wouldn't you say, Dave, that Halloween is all about fear?
That's a thought I'd had earlier. It is. And I remember being a kid with the movies that would come out. They scared me as a kid. Looking at them now, they're pretty easy. But look at the movies that they're making today. I mean, the paranormal activity type things that they're showing is so demonic. I mean, they're hiding it. It's not cloaked in silliness anymore. It's straight in your face demonism. They advertise it. And I live in Florida. We have theme parks, and a lot of theme parks, and they capitalize on this. And they have, you know, horror nights where you go to the theme park and people are dressed up and they try to do everything they can to be just as evil as possible. A lot of money to go to these places. There used to be a little haunted house. Now it's an entire haunted theme park. You know, it's Satan is not going down without a fight.
Yeah, they take Cedar Point, a local theme park here. It's a big one in this area, and they dress it up every, October to be. They call it Hollow Weekend or something. They everything that they take out all the other displays and bring in all this death and stuff and blood and gore.
They call it Hollow Scream. They call it Hollow Scream, I think is what they call it. So it's terrible. And a lot of people in town run and get jobs, for 1 or 2 days to do this, or over the weekend to be part of the program, and really makeup. And it's on any other day of the week. If you saw somebody come around a corner and look like that, you'd shoot them or something,
Yeah. they're having something locally around here called, I should have saved it in the paper, but I saw it called the Zombie Walk in some of the schools, and showed this young man with blood splattered all over him. I guess I'm not sure what a zombie race and a zombie walk, zombie zone looks like, I guess, but at least his face was blood splattered and kind of scary.
I could make a political comment, but I won't.
And I guess they would say, well, people pay money to be scared spitless, right?
Yeah, they do. They pay a lot of money to be scared. Sometimes it doesn't turn out so well for them, but yeah.
Yeah. And well, the scripture we read, God is not a spirit of fear, but I think Satan is a spirit of fear and death. And why?
Good point. God is a spirit of love and giving and kindness and, happiness and giving and all of that. And that's not what I see. Knocking your door and they go, give me a treat or I'm going to do something to you. I mean, it's extortion, when you think about it.
Yeah. And I guess even if they did it through various booths or play in the church basement and schoolyard, where they're safe maybe from pedophiles and others, but they're still a little bit in the same spirit, right?
Oh yeah.
It's
yeah,
the spirit of rebellion.
There. Yeah.
Spirit of rebellion. It's not the spirit of following along with God.
Right. No matter what venue you put it in, that spirit exists when you're doing that. When you're okay with that.
Let's put up the next slide, please.
All right. All right. Jeremiah 10:2. Thus says the Lord, do not learn the way of the Gentiles. Do not be dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the Gentiles are dismayed at them.
Or frightened. I like the word dismayed, frightened or fearful. Go ahead, Ken.
Yep. Okay. Jeremiah 10:11. Thus you shall say to them, the gods that have not made the heavens and the earth shall perish from the earth and from under these heavens.
And one way to look at it is, do I say this accurately? The Bible does not speak about God using pagan practices or reclaiming pagan things to worship him. I mean, nowhere in the Bible is God said, well, let's take this pagan child, where they put children through the fire and other bad stuff. Let's use this pagan ceremony. We'll change around and worship God. God does not reclaim paganism for his worship. He condemns it.
Yep.
Well, he's pretty clear just with Cain and Abel. He said, I want you to bring me a fatted calf. And Abel did. Cain showed up with fruits and vegetables. And God gave him another chance, but he would not accept it. He said, this is not acceptable. Go and sell what you have and bring back to me the fatted calf. So God gave him another chance because God is love, God is forgiving, God is merciful. Abel had a spirit of not being compliant with God, not an obedient spirit. And he said, you want a blood sacrifice, I'll give you one. And he killed his brother. The spirit of rebellion is all over these days. It's not a spirit of we just came back from the Feast of Tabernacles. And what did we do when we got on here? Because we haven't seen each other in a few days. We started laughing, going, what a great time. It's a spirit of camaraderie and of love and fun and laughing and look at the children and did you see so-and-so and wow, you've lost some weight. And it's everybody complimenting each other and being together and being family. Because we only get to see each other once a year. There's nothing negative. Can't.
Yeah, even when little problems pop up, it seems like our people, the camaraderie just brings us through it in a way where It's a spiritual uplift, the Feast of Tabernacles. No doubt about it. Let's pull in our next Jeremiah quotation.
All right. The children gather wood, the fathers kindle the fire, and the women knead dough to make cakes for the queen of heaven. And they pour out drink offerings to other gods, that they may provoke me to anger. Do they provoke me to anger, says the Lord? Do they not provoke themselves to the shame of their own faces?
Let's leave that up on the screen for a minute. I think one way to look at that is God is saying that whenever you start doing rituals for other gods or false gods, the little g, it obviously, not only does God not want you to, quote, Christianize that stuff, it makes him mad, but then he says, it's really going to hurt you. And the more you think about it, the more you mess around pagan stuff, the further you get from the true God. And that is going to hurt you and your society.
I have a scripture here, if I can throw this in. It's not in our notes, but it's one I found. 2 Corinthians 6 and verse 14. Do not be yoked together with unbelievers. What do righteousness and wickedness have in common? This is spiritually being yoked together with unbelievers. I cannot go and do your religious rituals because I'm now trying to yoke myself with you, and we don't walk the same. Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? What harmony is there between Christian and Baal? What does a believer have in common with an unbeliever? What agreement is there between the temple of God and of idols? For we are the temple of the living God, as God has said, I will live with them, and I will walk among them, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. Therefore, come out of them and be separate. Touch no unclean thing, and I will receive you. And, I think participating in unclean activity or events or whatever, somehow giving approval to that activity provides security at events that I don't think should happen, so I don't provide the security. And you go, well, what don't you like? How come you can be like that? Because I cannot be secure in your event. It makes me appear as though I accept your behavior.
Right.
And it's costly money, but
it'd be like participating in a gay wedding. It'd be the same kind of thing. It gives your approval to the ceremony or whatever that's taking place.
I had a guy that was in the divinity school ask me to provide security. A Girls Gone Wild video shoot. Do that. He says, why, don't you like girls? And I said, I love girls. That's why I cannot help them hurt themselves. That's somebody's daughter, that's somebody's sister, and possibly someday somebody's mother. I'm not going to stand here and protect them while they defile themselves for entertainment of perverted people. And this guy just absolutely could not believe I wouldn't do this. But he's a traveling pastor today.
Did you say divinity school? You said divinity school.
Yes, to become a pastor.
You might even have a degree, a doctor of divinity.
I wouldn't say doctor. I don't doctor with this guy, but
I have my degree in being divine. Never mind. It just cracks me up. I'm divine. There was a guy who was in ministry when we were a little kid, and he was known as Divine, Father Divine. And it just was the corniest Christian ripoff. That's how it seemed to me. And with a name like Father Divine. Oh, never mind. And the guy from the divinity school wants you to do that kind of show.
He stood there and asked me in front of my wife. I'm going, I cannot believe you just said this to me, and he couldn't, it was beyond him that I wouldn't do it. He was shocked.
Yeah, they don't get it.
That?
They don't get it.
Yep.
Are we ready for the next slide?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, Ephesians 6:11. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places.
You know, from that we can conclude that God wants us to resist evil, not compromise with it or join with it. Resist evil, fight evil, and I know that it's easier to compromise than or make a deal with than it is to resist. But God wants us to put on that armor of God and to resist evil. A little righteous indignation is not always a bad thing. And you know
Light
that
and dark,
this,
no.
yeah, they don't mix. And
No.
Halloween evening is one of the nights that the devil loves the most. Do they still have that night, destruction night, where people go out and burn and destroy, or did the police put a stop to that completely?
You're talking about Devil's Night in Detroit?
Yeah, and a few other places they had it too. But they went Devil's Night, where they went out and destroyed property. The police put a stop to that, right?
Yeah, you don't hear about it too much out of Detroit anymore. But then again, it's kind of every night, especially in Chicago. So they don't need a special night, you know.
By the way, there's a college that I graduated from. For the sake of not embarrassing them, I won't mention their name. But the Halloween parties got so wild and so out of control, so many problems, rapes. They don't want to hear all the horrible stuff. The college had to close down for several years, send the kids back home, empty the dorm for the Halloween weekend, cut off the classes right around it, so as to fight the total chaos that came to that campus during the Halloween period. Now, maybe since they fought that for a number of years and shut it down, maybe I think things have quieted down and that bad bunch has gone through school, but it was really bad.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Anytime it seems like people get a chance to have an excuse to act ungodly, and this is about as far away from that as you can get, they just love to do it. They look for it.
When you participate in Satan's things, they may start out subtle, end up the same way. To throw in the Christians to the lions or the gladiators or whatever was going on historically and go, well, that would never happen here. We're just having a little fun. But you give it a few generations and it will turn right back into it every time.
Yeah, they may start going after Christians in this country after the election. Well, we'll see. I don't want to scare anybody, but
well, somebody said they were gonna. I won't say who she is.
But the Christians cannot stop government programs because of their religious rights. They got to go along with it, or else. And some Christians are too afraid to vote against it because, oh well, we'll get into it. Let's go to the next one.
All right. 1 Corinthians 10:20, rather that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to demons and not to God. And I do not want you to have fellowship with demons. Pretty straightforward.
Kind of sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. This verse does kind of sum it up. Stay away from that.
The old 1-2 right there.
Yep. Stay away from it.
And you know, when the demons, when these pagans are doing their ceremonies, they're demons, demonstrations. They're demons inspiring some of that garbage going on.
Yeah, and you know what? It's not even so much the pagans. They bring some of this, some aspects that they can sneak into normal kind of their Halloween parties and stuff. They sneak certain aspects in. I'm sure that people don't even know it. The more disgusting and despicable they can be, the better their party is. And I'm sure there are certain things of it that Satan and the demons enjoy that they do, even though it's not blatant.
And they might use a fun expression. Well, let's have this party get down. Let's get down. or you're going in moral standards, you're going down. Let's go to the next slide, please.
All right. So you cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons. You cannot partake of the Lord's table and of the table of demons. Or do we provoke the Lord to jealousy? Jealousy, are we stronger than he? This also, like you said, pretty much sums it up. You read this, you just cannot partake in Halloween or anything to do with it.
And God, you know, if someone were to be critical of God, I mean, you shouldn't be, but you could, like one lady said, well, the one thing you say about God, he's jealous. As far as you worshiping another God, God does not like that.
No, he's not a fan of that.
And remember, by the way, the Ephesians, we don't have the scripture. We don't have that slide, but in Acts 19, the Ephesian, it upset the establishment because a very valuable amount of money in books of magic and occult and paganism were burned after Paul preached and got Christianity's momentum going in Ephesus. And the fact that Paul's influence had them burning their books on magic and the occult, a lot of it probably relate a little bit to the Halloween stuff as well, shows you that Christianity and the occult don't match. They, under I'm sure Paul's inspiration, they burned those books. Upset the pagans in that town a lot too, of course.
You know, that's an interesting point you just made, or a sentence you just said. Satanism or paganism and Christianity cannot occupy the same space. And where do they have all these supposed Christian Halloween parties at? Or church?
Churches. Most of them are churches, from my understanding.
And church, or the base, if they have a basement in their church basement or whatever. Well, this says it just straight up. They cannot occupy, like you said, they cannot occupy the same space. They don't mix. So when you bring Satanism and paganism into your church, what are you pushing out? Yeah. I mean, even if you don't know the truth like we know it, even if you're just casual Christians, I guess you would say, you got to think that if they can't occupy the same, how are you going to justify the next day? Let's say, the next day is your, Sunday service, that all of a sudden God has, joined your church services after you just invited pagan and Satan rituals and things into your, things that he would not approve of. Doesn't work.
If you study the cleansing that the do before they did offerings and things, they couldn't offer something, not just a special animal that had been picked. They had to cleanse themselves because God is a clean God. And that means spiritually clean is what we're talking. Those physical things were representing spiritual cleanliness. And demonism is not clean. People go, Harry Potter, what great movies, what great books. No, they're really not. They're opening your children's mind to something that is unclean. Fortunately, yeah. I don't have kids, but if I did, they would not be reading Harry Potter books.
Yeah, and I also, it's probably not as much as the books, but I remember we got one young man upset because we told his parents, well, if the video game is into demonic magic, isn't that just about as bad as the book? And then they should try to find other kinds of games for him, computer games for him to use. All the kid was so upset. I remember that to this day, but I still believe it's going to be bad for the kid. They don't know it.
No, I agree 100%.
Yeah, they don't know.
My kid's video games was the original Joe Brothers, where they were jumping over things, and Duck Hunt.
Yeah, stuff like
I go back to Pong. I'm old. I go back to Pong in television.
Yes, we had ones where they had the robots shooting at each other, a little block, and then there was, and if you advanced, you got an invisible robot. You didn't know where he was until he started shooting at you. Now that sounds so normal.
Berserk, yeah, I think what you're talking about is Berserk. Berserker.
Berserk? Yeah.
I remember
My
that
wife
game.
says that's not the right name. But anyway, after that, video games got too advanced for my slow mind, so I didn't keep
There's a
up with them.
place, a gun range here in town where you can go in and shoot live ammo in a room, and people attack you, and they drop dead and bleed out in front of you. And it looks like real people running at you, and you can shoot them and shoot. If you miss and hit the window shatters, and you can be put into live combat in a room with life-size video that looks like real people coming at you.
Now, well, I guess people could say that's bad in another way, but that's kind of the things you expect boys to be interested in, instead of the occult. But a lot of boys, or at least some, are interested in the occult, putting evil spells on people, and I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how it's all done, but stuff that is witchcraft and demonic, and you know what I'm saying.
You know, my students were asking me about fortune telling, that kind of thing, and same week that the lady that pretended to be Miss Cleo had died, and I said, "Did she see that coming?" That is true. I don't know why I blurted that, but I go, well, did she see that coming? So
okay, let's go to the next slide.
All right.
Now we're moving to the subject of the fall feast that they don't know about, the Feast of Tabernacles.
All right, John 7:1. After these things, Jesus walked in Galilee, for he did not want to walk in Judea because the Jews sought to kill him. But when his brothers had gone up, then he also went up to the feast, not openly, but as it were in secret.
Let me just leave that on the screen for a minute. I want to make one point. When you read John, it's a little confusing. You realize that when he says the Jews, Christ was Jewish. All of his disciples that became apostles were Jewish. All his friends, relatives, neighbors, at least in Galilee, were Jewish. I think because John wrote his later to a more Gentile audience, they're all Jewish. So when he says the Jews, he means the leadership of the Jews and the way they ran the temple. But they're all Jewish. And actually, Christ was popular with most of the Jewish people. He was so popular, mobs followed him around. He often had to get in the mountains to get away from the mobs. He was very popular, and that's one reason the Jews, the leadership, they were jealous of him. And the other one is, if people have an excuse not to go to the feast, look at what Christ did. They were, no doubt, they monitored the caravans that came normally from Galilee so they could arrest him and do him in. So Christ had to go up on a different caravan secretly, so like James Bond, secret agent kind of thing. But with people out to kill you, he still went to the feast. You know, we have our excuses for not going to the feast. Oh, I don't feel well. It's a long drive. Just saying, compared to Christ, it doesn't look so strong, does it? Our excuses.
Yep, good point. Good point.
And the next, go ahead. I'm sorry, Jade.
I just could not imagine not going to the feast. I just couldn't imagine. Help my kidneys, you know, whatever it took to get there.
All right. John 7:1. Oh, whoop. Let's try to change slides here. All right. Let's see how it says. Now about the middle of the feast, Jesus went up to into the temple and taught. On the last day, that great day of the feast, Jesus stood and cried out, saying, "If anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. He who believes in me, as the scripture has said, out of his heart will flow rivers of living water."
Wow. And what we think is he just simply popped up on the stage and started teaching. I was like, hey, that's Jesus. And then when he finished, he got lost in the crowd again. But let's go to the next slide. We'll also see one comment that I think is very interesting.
All right. And then the officers came to the chief priests and Pharisees, who said to them, "Why have you not brought him? The officers answered, "No man ever spoke like this man."
In other words, the Pharisees and the big quills are saying, well, he was right there on the platform, or we might call it the podium, on the stage. Why didn't you arrest him when he was there? And what did the police say, the temple guards? We were mesmerized by his sermon. That's how spiritual it was. They wouldn't dare touch him. And, that is an indication of just how powerful Christ was. And the last slide.
And the last slide. All right, but took leave of them, saying, "I must by all means keep this coming feast in Jerusalem, but I will return again to you, God willing." And he sailed from Ephesus.
The only point I want to make is Christ went out of his way, even when he was under danger of his life, to go to the feast. Paul, when it wasn't convenient, pressed hard to go to the feast. That's the fall festival that people should celebrate. And you'll get a spiritual lift, where Halloween, you might have fun and get candy, but it's not going to spiritually help you.
Yeah, and all these so-called holidays of the world are such a letdown. All this stuff and money goes into a few hours when you really think about it. Christmas and Easter and Halloween, and these days it's a few hours of whatever you do, and so much of it breaks people apart. They argue, and their lives are in some cases torn up. Yeah, sometimes they have good memories of this, but with God's feasts and holy days, there's only the one underlying thing is love for each other. And you just you're so looking forward to it. I've never heard anybody in my life say, "Man, I'll be glad when the feast is over with." But you hear every year, everybody says, "Man, I'll be glad when Christmas is over with." And that's something you need to, if you've never kept the feast, it's something you need to think about, or any of God's holy days. That people don't say, "I'm glad it's over," or "I'll be glad when it's done with," or "I'll be glad when we get through it." But every single worldly holiday, they say that about everyone. So that's a pretty telling example of how God's actual holy days are uplifting and wonderful, and just a joy to keep and celebrate.
A buddy of mine said, "I can't believe God commanded me to keep the feast. It doesn't make any sense that he had to command me to do this, because holy days are miracles." And we sing this song. I look around and, man, there's an awful lot of tears rolling down cheeks because people don't want it to end. They've not been in a place where they felt so much love, like-minded people, for 7 days, 8 days straight, where people that say, "I love you," they mean it. People just are accepted. Nobody looks down on anybody. Everybody's just the camaraderie, and that you feel safe. Oh, somebody got a nicer bicycle than me, or left out because you got nicer stuff, or anything else, because none of that, all that physical stuff doesn't matter. They're spiritual days. I've noticed with these other things, there's so much that's just physical.
Yeah, yep, absolutely.
I found also from my past, you eat too much candy, left me with a bad. Well, at any rate, I think we covered the topic pretty well. And next week, we're going to be talking about the immortal soul. Want to encourage you all to come. And if you want to, Ken will give you all the technical details about things you can find online. But if you want to email Ken comments or things you want us to discuss at some point, send them to Ken. I'm sure he has nothing else to do.
Not a thing. But I'd be glad to get them. The email is lineuponline2810@gmail.com. Or if you're already friends of mine on Facebook, just send me a message, or There's a ton of ways you can get information to me. So just if you're listening to this, you can find me. Also, again, I want to remind everybody, if you have an iPad, iPhone, and you get on the iBooks app and type in Garner Ted Armstrong, you will be able to download a bunch of books. We just uploaded last night the Halloween Pagan, I think is the name of it. So you can grab that new book. And we've had quite a few people downloading books online. So that's good. And we're going to keep adding more. Eventually, we'll get them all up there. There's a lot going on. So as these things come out and released, I will get the information to you.
Oh, speaking of watching prophecy and news events, I was listening to the financial news this morning, and most of it was good. There were some negatives, but there were some good things. But one of the experts said, and he had predicted this, he said, the week or two before the election, the GDP numbers will be the best we've seen in years. Now, I think what he means is our government will cook the books, and then a month or two later, they'll revise it down. They do a lot of that. Oh,
every month.
But see, it'll be after the election, so everyone will say, things are wonderful. And he predicted that, and sure enough, we've had the best GDP estimate. And now maybe it is true, but he says they're going to revise it down a month or two later, but it's all smoke and mirrors to keep the same party in power. And I believe him, but I guess everybody can have their own opinion. We don't know what the housing numbers are going to be yet. That's yet to come, but I'm trying to remember other news.
Hillary's emails.
I don't know if Hillary's email matter. It's too complicated. Or is it possible the American people, or a good chunk of them, don't care about corruption government?
Well, obviously there's a good chunk of them that just don't care. That's obviously, or they have their head in the sand. What'd you say, Dave?
I think it's expected. They just expect whoever's running things to be corrupt. That's just
that's another aspect. That's a good point. They're accepting of it. Hey, everybody does it. I'd rather have this person in office doing it than person B doing it in office. That sort of thing. That's what they think. They've come to accept it.
And also, I think the media, playing the role of the false prophet, are pretty much hammering the one they don't want and covering up for the one they do want. And I think they've done that maybe to a lesser degree in the past, now more than ever. And I believe that the media will be showing their power. Although, here's something I did hear. I think it's November 4th or 5th, and I better double check the date. Certain Christian groups are going to pray for the election somewhere in November. I think it's like a Thursday before the election. It might be November 5th, 6th, or 7th. I don't remember. And I was thinking to myself, regardless of what you think about who should win, whether Christians should participate, there's certainly nothing wrong about praying. Let me ask you, Ken, do you think, let's say if you believe God's already made up his mind, this country's going down and he's not going to turn back, even if that's true, I don't think it'd be wrong to pray for America.
No, I don't think so. I mean, look at Nineveh. We've talked about it before. They were willing to pray, and it helped turn them around. So I don't know why we wouldn't. We're told to pray for our government and for our leaders, and it definitely could have a positive effect if enough people in this country turned around and did get down on their knees and prayed that we turn back to God's will. But we'll see. We're going to find out in less than 2 weeks where this all leads. So, and it's getting real interesting.
And it could be that God is starting to bless America a little bit, but I'm not sure. I'm being very honest. I have no idea. We can't see the spirit world, but pray. And I think even if God doesn't answer our prayer the way we want, I still think like when people like Jeremiah prayed for the declining Judah, I believe God was proud of Jeremiah, even if he didn't want to do what Jeremiah wanted him to do, because God had made up his mind, this country's going into captivity. I think God will still be happy with us praying for them, even if he's made up his mind. And like you said, Kent, God's mind can be changed. There are several places in the Bible where people have changed God's mind.
Right. I just don't see a massive amount of people that it just seems that they're given to it, to, given into the corruption, and we'll see. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. Every day it gets more interesting. What you thought you knew yesterday is not anywhere near where we are today, and tomorrow it's going to be in a whole new place. So it doesn't.
Yeah, more emails come out. They tell you more stuff, and apparently this group came out from the Weiner email.
Yeah, I heard that. I haven't looked into that too much, but yeah, that's what from his phone or they took the cell phone or a computer that he was using to do what he was doing, and there was some stuff on that. I don't know. I guess we'll probably find out more and more about it, but based on history, you think, well, there's no chance anything's going to come of it, but less than 2 weeks before election, you pull this out? I don't know. It's a little strange to me.
Also, the fact that the polls sometimes have so much volatility, from the 8 to 10 point swing in 1 week. That's kind of surprising. Either the accuracy of the polls are at stake, or people there's still number undecided. It's bouncing back and forth. They would tell you the race is over and Hillary's got it won, and that may be true. I just don't believe it yet.
No, you know what it looks, I'm going to say this. I don't know if it's true or not, but what it looks like to me is people are starting to see maybe she could lose this, and I don't want to be caught on the losing side. So they're easing up their rhetoric, and they're kind of sliding towards the middle, or sliding towards, well, this could work, or he might win, or they're pulling back from, some of them anyway, are pulling back from this, complete all in for Hillary. They're backing off a bit because I think they're a little worried that she might lose, and then what,
I mean, we don't know, and obviously we can't see the spirit world and what influence they've got. I'm guessing what I think the spirit world is doing, but how much God will allow and what God will do, but pray about it.
One other interesting thing is you'll see certain people have 20, 30 people show up for their rally, and some people have 10, 20,000 show up, So it's, that's good to see that maybe people are starting to get sick and tired of being sick and tired. You know what I mean? I don't know. But I just, what? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I believe that from things I've heard even months before this, there will be a certain amount of cheating in the voting. People voting who aren't citizens, and the vote cheating could turn things around. And no matter what they say about laughing about it, there is a certain amount of vote cheating that will go on. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people voting who aren't citizens, or they're not alive anymore. A little bit of both. They call it Chicago style.
Chicago, yeah, Chicago style. What's the joke? I think I don't know if I said it or not before, but my mother voted. What is it? My mother voted Republican her whole life till she died. Then she started voting Democrat or something.
I like that. My mother voted Republican until she died. Then she started voting Democratic.
I was going to say a couple of things, just a couple of housekeeping things. There, all the sermons from Myrtle Beach and Panama City are up online. I just can't find my channel now, but they're up there on YouTube, and I'll share the link on Facebook, or if you want to email us at, like I said, lineuponline2810 @gmail. I'll send you the link, but they're all up there if you wanted to review those or watch those. And just again, I just want to thank everybody down there. I had a great time. Everybody was so, inviting and loving and just so warm. It was just such a beautiful time. We enjoyed ourselves.
Well, hopefully you come back next year.
Well, we'll see.
Hey, I didn't invite Kelly now.
No, I don't blame you. Hey. Well, next year I may go see a new bunch of brethren that I always wanted to meet. So, but we did enjoy ourselves thoroughly, which will make going somewhere else very difficult. But we might figure it out. So, with that said, anything else we want to cover real quick before we sign off? All right, I guess not. And if everything works.
We're happy you could make it. So glad you are here, and hope that we've been able to make God's word more clear. Until next time, may God be with you in everything you try. But for now, till next week, we have to say goodbye.